was 11 years old, I remember staggering along a hallway, then collapsing against a lounge door in a heap. I was gasping for air. The door suddenly opened and I heard my mother say, "Oh my God." My lips were blue. Soon after medical attention, I was transported speedily up to the northeast coast of Scotland to a convalescent home near Pittenweem. I was to stay there for 6 weeks, so I missed Christmas at home. 6 weeks is a long time for a little 11-year-old lad. But I was told later I could have died. It was an asthma attack. Now, asthma is a very common ailment, and it can affect children and adults. My young nephew, Ronnie, he was only 21 and he was in New Zealand at the time, and he died from an asthma attack. The pollen, I'm told, was very heavy that year. That would be his trigger. In actual fact, 22 New Zealand asthmatics also died in that same year. I was very pleased to make this film and very impressed by the brave people who stepped forward to talk to you about their battle with asthma, and also very grateful for the valuable inputs from the medical experts. Now, if you are an asthma sufferer, perhaps you may like to just bring this YouTube film to the attention of your GP. There might be some things in it that he hadn't considered before. We are very privileged in this country to have a body called the NHS, who, I'm proud to say, gave us an award for this film. But they are tireless in their care and their attention and their love for their patients. I should know. I've been under the care a few times suddenly and been very grateful for it. May God continue to bless their work, all who labour for the NHS. Now, please press the subscribe button, will you? It helps us a lot, and also guarantees that you will get notified about other programmes that come from us. So the film starts with a brief dramatic scene just to set things off. So here then is the asthma plan.
Ambulance. 24 Grange Road. Can you help me, please? I'm having a bad asthma attack. Hurry.
When you're on your own and you do panic, and there's no way of saying don't panic, you just do, you just can't help it. You can't breathe, and that's your lifeline, breathing. You think nobody's going to help you, so your panic sets in, and the more you panic, the more you struggle to breathe. is the worst one I've ever had. I mean, I do have quite bad attacks. Throughout my life I've had bad attacks, but that was probably the most severe.
Helen's case was atypical of severe acute attack of asthma in the community. She was one of our brittle asthmatics. On this admission, she had a life-threatening attack, which led to the admission to the intensive care unit, where she was treated for 48 hours and made a good recovery. These patients carry a very high mortality, so much so 80% of patients can die in the community. She continued with the emergency asthma plan and follow-up at the chest clinic.
In the 1980s, the death rate peaked. It was initially thought that these deaths may have been related to the excessive use of beta-2 agonist inhalers used as bronchodilators, causing cardiac arrest. However, 2 Northwest regional studies published in 1989 showed that the deaths were caused by poor emergency planning and the unawareness of the acute attacks of asthma. With better management, asthma death statistics fell and continue to do so. Between 1975 and 1986, Dr. Graham Crompton and his team in Edinburgh started a self-admission policy for severe asthmatics and introduced the administration by ambulance personnel of nebulized salbutamol with oxygen to patients with acute asthma en route to the hospital.
Oxygen is essential for the management of all patients with severe acute asthma, and I think that oxygen or lack of oxygen or not enough oxygen is the most common mistake made by doctors in hospital and outside hospital in the management of the severe acute attack.
Most adults who are admitted to hospital with severe asthma need to be there because their condition is severe, but studies nevertheless show that 3/4 of those adults could have had that admission to hospital avoided by different prior care. And very often we talk about this being acute asthma, and yet in fact it's not acute, and the patients have been having nighttime waking and increasing symptoms for several days before that admission, days which could have been used for altering treatment to avoid the admission.
The most important thing with these patients is to try and identify those who are at risk of a bad attack in advance. And that's not always easy, because many patients have their first severe attack out of the blue. There are certain things which enable you to identify them, particularly a previous history of bad attacks, waking up at night, simple and obvious symptom patterns. Once you've identified them, then the most important thing after that is to ensure that they take their treatment regularly, that they understand what their treatment is for, and don't slip on using it.
In 1988, Dr. Mahendra Paul Chopra, consultant physician at Tameside General Hospital Chest Clinic, together with his staff, set up a group program for high-risk asthmatics to prevent life-threatening attacks and deaths, and also to improve the quality of life for asthma sufferers. The aim was to institute treatment at home and reduce delay in delivering nebulized bronchodilators through oxygen. It became the Emergency Asthma Plan.
Emergency asthma plan entails a comprehensive team approach. Recognition of severe attack of asthma by monitoring peak flow, self-administration of nebulized bronchodilator with oxygen. After 15 to 30 minutes, monitoring the peak flow rate and seeing the response. If there was no response, patient will be admitted directly to the hospital while using the oxygen throughout the journey. Last but not the least, follow-up of these patients in the community and in the chest clinic and monitoring their progress.
A major part of my role is education of not only the patient and the carer or the relative, but also all health professionals on all aspects of asthma management. This involves teaching them about peak flow monitoring, about treatment options, inhaler devices, and about self-management plans. The benefits to patients have been extremely great over the years that the plan's been in action. Notably, patients have said that it's improved the quality of life, it's improved the control of asthma, has kept them out of hospital, but a major benefit is that it stopped the asthma deaths. One patient who has benefited greatly is a patient called Chris Partridge, who lives out in the countryside, and without this plan he would certainly not be alive today.
The emergency plan has, on more than one occasion, we reckon, saved my life. I mean, I've had very bad attacks, but in sort of everyday workings, it has reduced the number of hospital admissions that used to be very frequent, but now, mercifully, are becoming quite rare. And the other great benefit that I've found is that it has improved my quality of life, in that I'm in control of what happens to me, to a much larger extent, and have so become more independent, and life is much more worthwhile as an effect of that.
Chris has been an excellent example for every asthmatic. He has got excellent compliance of management. He still uses the emergency asthma plan regularly, every day. He complies with instructions given to him, and he is regularly followed up at the chest clinic. He is very motivated and confident as severe asthmatic, despite the fact he has got a lot of complications as a result of treatment.
I think the evidence is now overwhelming that teaching patients how to manage their own condition is the way forward. And a recent Cochrane review made it quite clear that those elements of self-management and patient education which are most successful are those which involve the patient being given a detailed self-treatment or action plan.
Where you have patients who are at risk from severe asthma and you know who they are, it's very important to pay more attention to them, to focus on them, give them the ability to be in control or try to get in control of their own condition. And that, I think, is the underlying philosophy with this plan.
The Tameside plan has actually covered most of the things that can be covered. The at-risk patients have been identified.
Since the introduction of the Emergency Asthma Plan in 1988, asthma deaths have been reduced at Tameside Hospital. There have been no asthma deaths since 1990, and acute asthma admissions have been reduced by more than half. Early treatment, supervision and education prevents intensive care admission requiring mechanical ventilation. It is also, therefore, cost-effective.
It is simple, effective way of saving lives and reducing acute hospital admissions, and it is very cost effective.
Emergency plan is very helpful. I spend less time in hospital because of it, which helps my lifestyle no end.
I'm in control of what happens to me, to a much larger extent, and have so become more independent, and life is much more worthwhile.